Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to explore why automation succeeds, or it doesn't, beyond just technology. This is really about operating models, integration, and change management. So on the panel, we have Kevin Kuntz, who's a senior vice president for the Gap in charge of operations fulfillment. And he's going to be helping us through the operational questions as we go through. Paige Marvin, she leads American Eagle Outfitters software and integration group. And we have Chris Considine, who is a consulting partner with Alex Partners. So Chris, I'm going to start with you. Many organizations invest heavily in automation, but struggle to see the ROI. From your experience, what's usually missing when automation underperforms? Is it the technology? Is it the operating models? Or is it just leadership alignment?
I've spent a couple of decades around distribution center design, implementations, seen many of them. I think there's a million ways to die in the West, Seth MacFarlane movie title. I think there's a lot of ways systems can go wrong. It really takes a big effort to succeed, no matter how good the technology is. Some of the challenges I've personally experienced in my journey is, the budget and the timeline being too tight, cutting back on testing time. Some of these compromises you make that are, minor compromises in the moment, but can really affect the implementation and the life of the equipment and technology. I think that's a big one. Another one is just buy-in across the organization. When you invest in automation, you're increasing efficiency, but you are creating some sort of constraints. You're losing some flexibility. When you were just throwing people at the problem, it's easy to be more flexible. So I think it's having cross-functional partners that understand the new operating model that exists when you put an automation solution in, whether that be the marketing team and how they promote and price the product that you're shipping, or whether that be the merchant team in changing assortment, the tech team in the integration. So I think there's some of the areas that I really see. It's budget and timeline and kind of buy-in and change management across the organization.
Thanks, Chris. Paige, what do you think?
Well, I agree with everything you said. One of the things I would add about buy-in and change management is you really want to put an effort and a focus on the folks in your facility, what I would kind of call the middle layer, managers, your group leads, your hospital zone clerks, your maintenance team. In your facilities, particularly if you're retrofitting automation into an existing facility, you're going to have a group of really high-performing people that are used to being able to get a lot done on their own, and now you're introducing them to higher automation than they've been used to, or maybe automation that you can't climb into a robotic system like you can into a pick mod. And this changes the nature of their jobs, and they're the ones interacting with it. And they're the ones that you need day-to-day buy-in from to understand the system and to give you real-time feedback. So a lot of times we focus on the end user, we focus on the senior leadership, but I think a place where change management can fail is at that middle layer. It's really important to have that focus there.
And Kevin, when we start talking about ROI and struggling to see ROI, what are your thoughts?
A lot of times I think when you put in a project, is your team experienced in change management? Do they understand? And Paige started to kind of down the path of, hey, this was what we used to do, and this was the old SOPs that we followed. And I think in today's technology, the amount of collaboration that you need to make new systems work and retrain people. Do they understand the new objective? This is old, but when we transitioned from Gap's old batch systems to Kofi in a continuous wave, right? You had to completely retrain everybody. It was always before push. You had all these points through the system that you could create buffer. So you didn't have to be real disciplined, right? So that discipline, in my opinion, is going to play a huge role into where you experience success or where you experience a lot of failure. Are people clear of their roles? What we'll talk a lot about at Gap on brand new projects, where you choose to jump off and with what building, with what leader team becomes very important, because they build the blueprint for everyone else to follow, especially today. You think about the sophistication, the AI, all of the advancements that we've seen in robotics and automation in general. incredibly easy if things don't go 100% well. Point the finger at your maintenance partner, hey, or point the finger at your engineering team or your material handling group, hey, you bought a lemon. If anybody goes into automation and they feel like it's not going to be a tough road and they're prepared to work through and create new SOPs that work, I think that's where you go really wrong a lot of the time. So I think getting them to work as one cohesive unit. And look, you've made millions of dollars investment. That product's not going away. So what we say is don't fight it, right? You might as well just own it. Let's move on and get to returning the ROI that we need.
Kevin, when operations are moving away from buying tools or point solutions, they're moving in towards buying integrated ecosystems. How do you know if a solution will scale across the organization instead of just having a good pilot?
I agree in one hand that, yeah, we buy integrated solutions. If you have a greenfield site, that works really well. If you're an existing aging retailer who has a very mature network, I think you can slowly, the way Gap has done it is we have bought endpoint solutions and we've created an ecosystem. And that's been going on for the last 15 years, but we're still on that same journey. It's just a really long journey that continues to weave in new technologies over a long period of time. So for us, when we go look at that, you got to look at your existing operating model. Does your solution bolt on to your current product flow? Or is it going to completely have to reroute and redo everything in the facility? And I'll tell you the latter, meaning that, hey, I look at this and I fell in love with the technology, but it doesn't really bolt on to my existing operating flows. It's really difficult to do. It's like, hey, I've got a linear path here, and all of a sudden I fell in love with the technology, and I got to take this right turn, go do what I need to do, take another right turn to kind of process it, and then reintroduce it in the flow. That's hard. So what Gap does specifically is we're looking for things that we think complement, and we have a very strong point of view, and people disagree with it, but we are definitely bought into and have been for a long time loop sortation, right? So everything we buy fits into our product flow in some way, shape, or form. Now it used to be batch, now it's continuous order fulfillment through Argo systems, but it has to fit in and run in a way that's bolts on and is seamless. So the big project Gap moving into now, we have our friends here from Ocado sitting up front. We're buying an overhead storage and retrieval system. We're going to test it in Canada first, and we're going to make sure that fits into our flow. And that's the last thing we have left to automate, really, is our picking operations.
Chris, what's one integration challenge that's often underestimated early on, and how did that impact the automation roadmap?
Yeah, I think about one of my, greatest failures of a distribution center that didn't go well, that I spent a lot of time in the conceptual and detailed design of the implementation. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, now with the different technologies we've put under one roof is making sure that IT, the systems, work together, and the handoff between the WMS and the WES or CS is clearly defined, and you make the right decision there. I had an experience where WMS provider wanted to take on more functionality. The WCS that was in there wanted more, and we ended up making a decision that neither was happy with, and that created system latency, and we had to reconfigure and redesign system post go live because the transfer of data information between those systems just wasn't set up right. So I think it's really important to have experience in the right decision. It's easier when you're doing multiple distribution centers in one business than you're one every decade. But leaning on people that have been through the pain of that, understanding like you have to make the right decisions on system configuration and which software solution owns which piece, and make sure that's right in place to their strengths.
Paige, those are your words: software integration, technology stack. What do you think when Chris says that?
Well, I agree. And the other thing I think about is all of the nuts and bolts that will take an otherwise positive experience bringing automation in and make it just bumpy as heck. So things like your IT security needs, your infrastructure needs, your inventory control team, HR, making sure the supporting folks that need to be on board have an understanding of the technology and support it and are in working with the project early. Depending on your current infrastructure, I think IT security is probably my favorite one is that, years ago, you could start a project, an automation project, and you can bring in ITsec, and it wasn't nearly as complicated, and there wasn't nearly as many threats, or at least we didn't think there were. And you could meet with them and set out next steps and flow with it and go live, and maybe engage them once or twice again. And now those are folks that you need along the journey with you, and they're of course not going to be your key people for making sure the building flows, but they sure as heck can make sure that your project and your implementation experiences less friction, and you're able to resolve issues quickly as you run into firewall and all of those kind of things. So bring in those folks early and often, and make sure that they understand what you're trying to accomplish. Particularly when you're in a Gap or American Eagle, you have centralized security, centralized network. They may not be at a distribution center often, and so you need to introduce them, and you need to set yourself up for success by making a really strong partnership with those different groups.
Kevin, you mentioned Okada as your latest partner. How do you evaluate technology partners different today compared to earlier automation efforts? And what capabilities matter most? Not to put you on the spot with the Okada sitting here.
I think it goes for anybody. It's generic, right? So I think successful projects start in most situations, right, where it is a long courtship that takes place, right? You learn about the product. You have to envision it in your environment, like I previously said. Does it fit your product flow? Then you got to learn, more in Paige's world about, hey, how is the infrastructure? How is the data shared? What does an implementation look like? What is tech security? Are all those things compatible? So for us, I think it's really about, do you have like-minded goals in place, right? Some technologies, to be honest with you guys, I think you take a look at the technology and the way it's being used today, and you have a completely different vision of what you're going to do with it compared to most other people. Is that partner down for that new challenge? And I'll use that with Okado. I think what's different with our partnership is we're going to more of a, not discrete order picking, but a batch system where we're doing groups of orders in a continuous, waveless type system. Your vendor partners, are they up for that challenge? Do they get excited, just as excited as you do about what that could bring? Is that new business that you can get into together? So, I think there's a lot of considerations, but, picking the right partner is of the utmost importance. Are they in it for the long haul? With our most recent project, it's been fun because you're working with operators. They run their own facilities already. So I think there's a lot of synergy there.
So, I do a lot of work for private equity firms that invested in companies, boards and C-suites, and they look at these projects and they see risk, and revenue's at risk. There's efficiency opportunity and EBITDA opportunity, but there's revenue at risk. And so I really look at the people that on the vendor side and the level of experience, and have they kind of been through the cycles of learning how these projects can go wrong, to know those lessons, to then ensure that is brought to the project for my client or whoever I'm working with. So I think experience is critical in having seen how things go wrong, knowing where mistakes get made, and then knowing how to kind of overcome them and make sure, increase the probability that you have a highly successful implementation.
Gotcha. So you're taking us to our next section. So even when automation works, execution still fails in a lot of places, especially during the change. Paige, what specific steps did you take to protect service levels while transitioning away from legacy systems?
Oh gosh. Okay. So first, do not shorten your testing. We all know this, and we all live and die by it. But then you get into the actual execution phase of testing, and it is the place where everybody wants to squeeze the project, and you just cannot do that. Protect that with your life. Yes. And so along with that, you want to make sure that your business partners, your senior leadership, they have a clear expectation of what a go live, what an implementation is going to look like. They are not expecting day 2 to be just running full steam with everything perfect. Sometimes it is perfect. You want to have some really clear expectations. And then if you are in a scenario where, like Gap, like American Eagle, you have multiple facilities, bringing up a facility, you really want to give the new automation a good solid ramp up time. And particularly in the first several weeks, really take your time to look at all of the nuts and bolts again. Are your inventory updates working correctly as you would expect them? Is the data that's flowing correct? Validate that. Give yourself some time to really validate that things are solidly good, and then take off from there. Because we all know when you bring in particularly highly automated systems, senior leaderships, they want to see it, like they are excited. There's robots now and they want to see it running, and they want to see it running fast, and they want to see an ROI. And you have to figure out how to set those expectations and give yourself some leeway to ramp up slowly, go slow so you can go fast.
And Kevin, what do you think when I mentioned service level and order promise dates and having all these technology solutions come into your building? What are your thoughts there? How did you protect that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paige is right? So you've got testing scenarios that you have to do. You don't want to, short circuit or shortcut any of those tests that you've got. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a different perspective too, which is very few projects have I ever seen where you go do the prescribed testing, right? That was written out in advance. Sure, you're going to pass. People have done it 3 times already. You also have to have that rebel somewhere in the team that's going to say, hey, I'm hitting the wrong button on purpose because I know in a controlled environment it works well. But what happens when I do something that I'm not supposed to do? It's a happy medium, right? So having a set ramp up, yes, very important. Having test scenarios, very important. Also having a strong team, right, around you that have different focuses, because Paige said it well. You get a lot of pressure. Hey, deliver. You just made a $10 million investment. I want to see an ROI and I want to see it next month. And then you got to have people that are on the opposite side saying, hey, the thing that matters the most is you can't mess up for the customer. It has to be accurate. It has to go out on time. So it's really about having a good balanced point of view and surrounding yourself with a team that you've got a group that's focused on the customer service. You got a group that's focused on productivity, which usually falls on the engineering team, and just make sure that your inventory control folks are there, ensuring inventory accuracy and customer accuracy and on time.
Did you relax the SLAs, or did you just stick with the SLAs and promise dates as you're going through this journey?
If you've been in for the apparel industry, we're honest, like there's not been a lot of SLA changes in the last 2 decades, right? People expect to get an order that's accurate. They expect to get communication. The thing that's probably changed the most is the speed expectations. I think Amazon really kind of rewired the whole industry to say speed matters. To be honest with you, pressured some of the on time and complete metrics are out there, but you were in a hurry to get it done. But for the most part, no, I don't think you change your if you have to change the metrics, Carlos, I think you probably are overcompensating for something that's not working well. Yeah. So I would say for us, if they change, they should get improved. They should get better. So if you made that investment, hey, I just don't want productivity. Am I getting remarkably faster? And if you can say, hey, my productivity is better, my customer service is better, you probably picked the right project.
Gotcha. Chris, what do you think?
Evan is right. We went through a really strong cycle of pushing for speed, and it's still important. I think it bifurcates across categories. We have a home delivery survey for the last 15 years. We've surveyed consumers about something like speed and their expectations. I think it's still very important. What we're seeing more of is consumers expecting to get their order when you told them that you were going to give it to them, right? So the certainty around performance is become really important. I think for all of us here, when we place an online order and we know a date that we're going to get it, it's important that we get it on that date. So I think in terms of the KPIs that matter, that's there. In terms of relaxing SLAs and kind of contingency planning and so forth, depending on the scale of the project, we do a lot of work to really figure out how you're going to ensure you meet that performance while the facility's ramping up and if issues happen or if you run over time, and that could be simple as having some manual workaround processes. It could be as extreme as having a 3PL on tap to go do the fulfillment if you need that to cover you, as to allow the project to get to where it needs to go.
Paige, how do you manage change on the floor, especially where you may have associates who might be a little skeptical from previous initiatives?
Bring them in early. You can't bring your whole supervisor group to choose your next automation project, but you can bring them in very early and educate them, get them in front of the solution, ask them to think about it. One of the things that is really important is ask them to think about all of the exceptions and all of the things that they solve every day where they become a hero and they're going out and getting it done. And let's identify those so that we can make sure that the systems meet those. And we can also acknowledge that these folks that we're working with in the DC operation have this skill level and this level of knowledge that we may not have. I think that they need to be heavily involved in testing, and you need to be prepared to make sure that you're talking through things in a way that everybody understands. And I don't mean in any kind of patronizing or talking down. I can understand technical concepts. I cannot speak them. Somewhere between hearing them and speaking them, it comes out much more like a fifth grade presentation. But you want to be able to talk about what's happening. Here's what the machine is doing. Here's what the software is doing while this algorithm is running. Here's what we're expecting to see. Let them get plenty of hands-on experience and give plenty of feedback. This is really hard because you have jobs to do and you have jobs to do and you got to keep the facility running and all of those things. But involving folks early and particularly identifying those leaders, maybe not even the leaders in title, but the people that are kind of they're the outspoken ones. They're the folks people look to. They're the person you call when you can't figure out what happened. They kind of get it there and explain things to you. You want to identify those kind of non-official leaders and get them involved. And then make sure that there's a cultural alignment with the organization that you're bringing in. You want the folks that are working, say the Vargo engineers that are on the floor testing, you want them to be excited and enthusiastic about working with the folks in your facility. And one of the reasons that American Eagle has a great partnership with Vargo is because you have all these folks that come in to test and implement, and they want to sit and talk about things and explain things, and they're excited about that. And you don't want to bring in a vendor who is going to just be, heads down. And you gotta make sure you have that interaction and you have that kind of cultural fit and partnership. And then, when you have that, stuff goes wrong, you can solve to it pretty quickly. If you have a misalignment, you can solve to it.
Paige, thank you. Kevin, what do you think about change management when you're trying different automation vendors, different processes, and do you see people getting burned out on opportunities?
I mean, she almost went through the playbook, right? I mean, like you nailed it. The only thing that I would add that she didn't say maybe is what's in it for the associate? What's in it for them? So what's your sales pitch, right? How do you get them to accept it? So a lot of the projects we've done is you have the physical requirements on the employee have been lessened over time. You're managing for less repetitive motion, less lifting. So if you can say that up front, hey, we're investing in this technology. Here's what's in it for you right out of the gate. It usually works out really well because people then say, oh, okay, I don't have to lift unloading, for example. I'm going to unload 5,000 cartons today. You don't have to do that tomorrow. Hey, they're usually pretty up for that if you make their life easy.
Right. So let's shift forward because the next wave of automation is going to look very different. So engineering for the future. Chris, this is for you. Instead of optimizing purely for cost, what design decisions did you make to prioritize agility and responsiveness? And can you share an example where automation has helped absorb the demand spike that would have broken an old or the existing model?
We used to have this traditional peak that would last a week every year, and that's what we all planned for. And now we deal with a lot more variability in when the volume spikes throughout the course of the year. It can be passing a promotion, it could be prime week, it can be other things that are driving the variability. I think designing a system, I was in a building last week, a footwear building. I saw something really cool, which was they were able to flow their e-com product through a couple of different flow paths in the building. It gave them the ability, their unit sorter was designed to do retail and wholesale distribution. When that wasn't a capacity, they could go run some e-com volume through that. Their traditional e-com volume was through the goods to person and a pick module. So I think building the flexibility in design to allow flows that can go in different directions in the building that you don't know that you need. They're not in the business requirements today, but those flow paths are opened up so you can react and have capacity. Because one of the biggest things that will happen in a building is you'll hit a capacity of a constraint. When you used to be able to put more and more people at it, you could get away with it. Diminishing productivity, you could get away with it. Once you put automation in, you're going to have a cap on that capacity, even by channel or by product category. So I think building flows within the building that allow product and resources and infrastructure to be allocated more flexibly across channels is a great example of how you can set yourself up. What we're seeing is more dramatic e-com peaks at strange times of year because marketing decisions are taken or trends happen with the consumer.
I know over the years we've talked a lot about this. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, Chris made a great point, right? I mean, the traditional Christmas holiday peak isn't what it used to be. I think, that's changed somewhat, but you still have spikes that are 5 or 6 or 10x higher on any given day. In order to do that, our philosophy is we never try to automate 100% of anything, right? You always got to have some part of your business that you can throw people at, so that you can hit that Easter Sunday challenge that comes up, whether it's truly on the Easter holiday or Prime Week or, your Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. The challenge that I find us facing today is not to let yourself get into a situation where you're running technology and automation 90% of the year. And when you got to go old school, did you forget how to do it? Just make sure that you've always got some percentage of your work that you can flex. So that's very important for us.
Business continuity too, just being able to operate in case of whatever catastrophe.
So social commerce and AI-driven demand will introduce volatility into the supply chain. How will this change how you invest in future automations? Kevin, can you give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's closely related to the question that you just asked around how do you respond to peaks, right?
Right.
Because if you are doing social selling and you are fortunate enough to get something to go viral, you're going to have a lot of demand come through in a very short period of time. So do you have the ability to flex with your systems? But you also got to have the ability to flex with your people, right? So are you using gig workers in your warehouse so that, hey, if the volume runs in today, how do I get people that aren't working every single day in tomorrow, right? The gig workers, not for 100% Uber or DoorDash anymore. You're seeing it used in, the retail industry, warehousing. So you got to have not only the systems, you got to have solutions that are easy to train. I mean, we like to say anybody walks into our warehouse, 90% of the jobs, we can have you productive in 5 minutes or less. So that's another important component of it.
What I think is a really interesting trend in automation is over the last decade, stores were relied upon for fulfillment. You kind of had this lever where you had you had something go viral and you had the inventory out in your stores. You could rely on the stores to go ship. A lot of retailers have shifted away from that, understanding that it's, on a cost per unit basis, it's much more efficient to ship out of a distribution center with split shipments and so forth. So I think in some regard, we've actually concentrated AI and viral driven demand back to the DCs. And I think, that is creating a challenge for folks to think about it because this is happening in real time. Over the last couple of years, we're seeing around several retailers are pulling out of stores. So I think the challenge is being created, and I think it's a good challenge for us, DC operators, to figure out how to deal with that flexibility and deal with the concentration of volume coming back. We talked about different flows and some of those ideas that can help with that.
Paige, as the audience walks the show floor, what should they be looking for that signals whether a solution is a solid solution, will deliver an ROI? What are your thoughts and guidance to the group?
You just have to really talk to you have to get to know the folks. Kevin kind of alluded to this really well, that you want to make sure that you're kind of going through this process of getting to know your vendors, and while you're walking around, talk, like, just ask, what is the experience that they've had? How do they think about a go live? How do they think about testing? These are really general questions, but they will let you get into the head of folks about kind of how they're thinking about you as a customer. And I mean, like, I will immediately, my eye will start twitching if they go, oh, it's really easy. It's so easy. We have a 10-step process and we'll have you live in a month. And I'm like, okay, like, you want to try to draw out information from them. I haven't seen one booth here yet that doesn't have a cool product. There's a lot of really awesome products out there based on the model and what you're trying to sell for. Of course, the technology will fit your business better or not, but you also want to make sure that the way that the folks that will be interacting with you, whether it's your senior leaders or your users or your engineering technical systems, that they are kind of a good cultural fit for your organization and they understand your goals and they're willing to be a partner with you. It's a long-term kind of relationship and not just hey, we're selling you this and showing up. And it sounds pretty obvious, but sometimes you just have to spend a little time with people, get to know them. And then as you're walking the floor, get their contacts, reach out to do all of that due diligence that you would typically do when you hired a new person, new senior leader at your facility, and make sure you have that connection and focus beyond just the actual technical product.
Really good advice. I think you have to be cognizant of where you are in your automation journey. You don't want to get over your skis around seeing a cool piece of tech, but not being able to go deploy that yourselves and not being ready in your business to constrain yourself for efficiency, right? So I think it's really about, there's a lot of cool toys out there. Being realistic about where you're at in your journey and focusing kind of on parts of your operation, the biggest challenge, or solutions that are proven and have credentials and experience is a really important thing.
Same conversation we've been having. Don't try to put a square peg in a round hole, right? If you don't walk up to the booth and get excited about what you're seeing, it's probably not for you. Does it fit your flow? Do you see it making life easier in your distribution center? I wouldn't overcomplicate it too much. I mean, there's a lot, we've all said it, a lot of really incredible innovation that you're going to see on the floor. Don't get hung up on, wow, that's really cool. Get hung up on saying, hey, how does that fit in my world? And I think you'll be okay.